Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of BIM Like a Boss. I'm Jay Merlan, BIM specialist at UNIFI Labs. Today, we're going to step out of our typical discussions that are specific to BIM management techniques and workflows. And today, we're actually going to have a look at calculating ROI, or return on investment, as it applies to software purchases. And today I'm joined by Julie Grondin, UNIFI's VP of Product and Marketing, who will also walk us through some of the tools that we've built at UNIFI that should help you demonstrate the value of UNIFI CORE to any of those decision makers at your organization. And here are the points that we'll be going over today. I'll go over a brief overview of what ROI is. Then Julie will present our UNIFI CORE ROI calculator, which is a tool that can help you calculate the ROI of implementing UNIFI CORE. Julie will also go through our decision maker presentation, which is a PowerPoint slideshow that we share with our advocates to help them present the value of UNIFI's products. And finally, we'll have a live Q&A session. Please use the Zoom's Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen to post any questions you have for Julie and I, and we'll answer them at the end of the session. And before we start our discussion on ROI, I wanted to share a quote that applies to ROI in regards to software purchases, and especially in regards to the software purchases in the AEC space. And the quote is, "Normally, enterprise software per se has no value to an organization. The value comes from the outcomes that flow from using the software." Now, this statement might be common sense to some of you, but I thought I'd share it because it applies directly to what we do in the building industry. For example, your design or construction firm most likely doesn't directly make money from a new software purchase, but rather you'll want to focus on the gains in efficiency and reduce number of issues when using that new software. So ultimately, that will equate to money saved, and money saved can be just as valuable as money made. So what is ROI? And from the business side of things, return on investment, ROI, is a performance measure used to evaluate the efficiency of an investment. And I realize that this definition comes from Investopedia, so it sounds very much like a financial term. But put simply and relating it to the purchasing of new software, calculating the ROI of an investment means you're evaluating how much bang you're getting for your buck with the new application. So let's look at a basic formula for calculating ROI. So you just take the amount returned from the investment, subtract the cost of the investment, and then divide it by the cost of the investment. And as you can see here, ROI is actually very easy to calculate once you have an idea of the amount of money you've gained from an investment. Now let's just work through a simple example to demonstrate the basic ROI calculation formula. So say at some point you invested some money in Bitcoin. Let's just say you bought $1,000 worth. Then after some minor profits, maybe Bitcoin had a good couple of weeks, you decide to cash out all that Bitcoin. And after selling, you're walking away with $1,200 in cash. So what you want to do here is subtract that number, $1,200, from your original investment of $1,000. And in this example, we end up with a $200 gain, which is not bad. Finally, to calculate the ROI of this investment, you need to divide that $200 by the original investment. So in this case, it was $1,000. So the $1,200 minus $1,000 equals a $200 gain, and divide the 200 by 1,000, and that gives us 0.2 or a 20% ROI. So now that's pretty simple math. But the calculation itself is relatively simple when you have an exact dollar amount to calculate your gain. However, in our world, when calculating the ROI of a software purchase, things can get quite a bit more complicated. And in order to calculate an ROI for software purchases in our industry, you'll want to find out how much time really is spent on tasks with and without the software. So keep in mind that a lot of these numbers will be guesstimated or averaged. And these are just a few examples of benefits to look for that help calculate your ROI on software purchases in our industry. Increased productivity and reduction in time to complete tasks, reduced number of errors, improved system reliability, and having less maintenance or even fewer problems to solve. So I think a lot of these will strike chords with many of you. And again, these are just a few indicators to watch out for as we go through the ROI calculator. So now that we've covered some of the basics of ROI, I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor over to Julie so that she can walk us through UNIFI's ROI calculator and the decision maker presentation. Go ahead, Julie.
Thank you. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so I want to start off just by talking a little bit about why we decided to have this webinar and focus so much on ROI and what this kind of means for the whole process of being able to bring a software on. When we're talking with some of our different customers, and myself from my own experience of being in tech and in product for the majority of my career and having to bring softwares into companies for our own company use, it can be such a huge challenge sometimes to figure out exactly how to go and appeal for budget and appeal for permission if you're not the one who's able to sign off. So a lot of times you might be going to an owner of you might be going to a principal, you might be going to a CTO, you might be going to somebody else who may not necessarily understand the need. And at the same time too, if you've been having, if you're not necessarily practiced in being able to present this information, it can be a challenge, especially if some people keep pushing you back and saying, we don't want to, what's the ROI of the solution you're putting forward? A lot of times it's going to be a question involved in the decision maker's request from you. So what we wanted to do is to help our current customers and prospective customers who are taking a look at UNIFI and trying to figure out how to get some movement internally to be able to adopt the software, is to be able to provide a way for people to take a look at how UNIFI is going to be able to help them and what's that going to mean within the return on investment for investing in UNIFI. What's that going to give you back? So in going through this journey, we created an ROI calculator that you see right now on the screen. That's a little bit of a one-page Excel sheet that asks a number of questions that we feel are going to be able to provide us with numbers to kind of calculate right now what are some of the largest time wastes right now with regards to content management that we're really going to be able to move the needle on, or that we know we're going to be able to move the needle on. So I'll take you through this calculator right now with some examples, and we'll be able to see how this works and how it's going to be able to calculate ROI. What I'll be able to show you after is a templated presentation deck that takes some of this information, and you'll be able to get your hands on this deck after the presentation to be able to use to present this information once we've been able to calculate it out. And you'll be able to use this calculator as well to figure out the unique numbers within your own firm. So what we want to be able to start off with is asking how many designers are currently accessing content through your content library. So we want to get an understanding of how many people are searching for content, pulling content down, and eventually loading content. Because if you're using UNIFI CORE, you've been researching UNIFI CORE, that's where our most significant time savings is for the average user of UNIFI CORE, is being able to find content and being able to load content with just one click. So we're asking how many designers there are. In this example, we'll just use one just to be able to show the numbers on what this could do just for one designer. We ask for the average salary of the designer within your firm. We ask for the average salary of the library administrator. We also want to understand a little bit more about how a designer, or how often a designer is currently searching for content each week. This varies from firm to firm, and it varies on project to project. So we went out and surveyed our current customers right now and asked the users specifically, how often are you as a user, as a designer, as a modeler, searching for content in your library? So they mentioned that this is roughly 13 times. Again, this varies, and the reason this is a calculator, so you can put in numbers that you're more comfortable with or you feel are more reflective. But we've put our average down here just for a starting point if you'd like to use that. We also ask how much time does it take for a designer to find the content in your current library. So when we surveyed our customers, we asked them, prior to using UNIFI, how long would it currently take you to search? When you started searching for that piece of content, what was the average? It's going to vary, of course, but this was the average that came back, is that it was roughly taking them, depending on the library setup, 16.7 minutes searching for content every time they were searching for it. We also wanted to better understand how often a designer at the firm is loading content into a model each week. Our survey results came back as 8 times a week. Again, it's a starting point for you guys once you get your hands on the calculator to be able to adjust it to your firm standards or your firm numbers that reflect the activity in your firm more. And we also asked, how long does it currently take, or how long did it take prior to using UNIFI for a designer to load content from the library and into a model? So we had highs and lows. Some people had to update content every time based on the quality of the content. And some people, it was a matter of just being able to get it in there. It was taking a lot of time, and that clocked in at 2.7 minutes for the survey that we got. So when we plugged all this information into the calculator, what we see is, so basically on a design team of one designer, that designer, based on the information we got back from our own customers, is that they were spending 188 hours a year searching for content. They were also spending about 18 hours a year just loading content. So the process of loading content to the model was taking 18 hours out of the entire efforts of a designer throughout the entire year. So in this line right here, we've totaled that. So for one designer, based on our survey findings from our customers, they're spending close to 207 hours a year, which translates into 5.2 weeks of time spent specifically for searching for and loading content. If we were to take a look at the average salary of a designer, if we've used $65,000, I got that off some websites and stuff and some job searches of what people were offering these roles. And so basically this time, these 5.2 weeks equates to almost $6,500 of salary that's basically there to support searching and loading content. When we also surveyed our customers about, how much time did it take you prior to using UNIFI, and how much as a user, as a designer, how long is it currently taking you to search for content, and how long is it taking you to load that content with our one-click load? Based on the numbers that they gave us, it was equating to a 77.7% reduction in time spent. So that's quite a significant time savings, just looking at the percentage. But when we start going into the numbers and take a look, okay, so what does that actually mean within the hours and the dollars and cents of things? So basically, a 77% savings here, or reduction in time spent, is going to allow over $5,000 of that money that was kind of being spent on time searching and loading back into the design pool, so back into being able to support more of the design efforts. That means that there is going to be, that's going to reduce the time spent from 5 weeks down to 1.2 weeks out of the year in loading and searching. And if we take a look at the investment for UNIFI CORE, our higher rate right now, basically if you're only buying one license, for our active license plan, would be $18 a license. And just based on that alone, so we've got a $216 a year cost on that. And so basically between the amount of money that you're saving that we can redivert back into design focused work versus inserting and searching, it gives a whopping return on investment of over 2,000%. So basically for an expense in this case of $216 a year, you're going to be able to divert close to $5,000 back into active design work versus searching and loading. So does anybody have any questions on that at this point right now? Does anybody want to does anybody want to volunteer to kind of provide some information so we can run through this with one firm's numbers? I don't see any volunteers coming up right now on the screen, so I'll just keep going. So basically, this is more or less the ROI calculator or pro forma that you can pump some of these numbers into and get some information on how much time your designers are actually spending on loading and searching. And when you do increase this, everything, so if I were to change this to a design team of 10, it continues to update all the numbers and the hours. So what we also wanted to do, knowing that this one calculator isn't enough to go and hand off to somebody, it's got to support something, we also created a templated proposal. So I'll take you through the proposal right now of what we'll be handing off to you. So in my own experience of having to have learned how to basically sell internally, not necessarily starting off in a sales position myself or a marketing position, the early, 25 years ago in my career, having to kind of do that hard knock of selling internally versus selling to customers. It's a completely different process. So I wanted to be able to put together a templated deck that you can make your own. If you can pull some stuff out. If it's going to help you in justifying budget or justifying approvals for bringing on our software or any other type of software to be able to support the efficiency in your department. Oh, I do have one question. The question is, how does direct salary and billing rate tie into the ROI? Billing rate is a multiple of a salary. So it's yes, my apologies. There were some additional numbers that I did need to interject in this. So basically, we've used in the ROI calculator more or less just a raw number, so a salary number. So in $65,000 a year per se. One of the things that we have to take into consideration is that there's a lot of hard costs that make that salary number. That's the salary number is what that person gets as return for working in the company, but the company actually has to invest sometimes 2 to 2.5%, 2 times or 2 to 2.5 times more in actually supporting that role just existing there. So as far as the cost of computers, the cost of healthcare, the cost of having an HR team, all the different costs that necessarily go into being able to support that person's role within the company. So this ROI can actually increase dramatically just because the overall cost in hours can increase dramatically as well as we start to put in that additional billing rate multiple involved in the salary. So I will be adding that into that before I progress in sending that out. So thank you very much for that question. So I'll delve into the template here that I'll be sending out to you as well. This is something that you guys can customize. You can put your logo here. Again, pull whatever you'd like out of this. And this is a way for you to kind of go and present your thoughts and present your case to be able to get that permission or the approvals to be able to proceed with getting the software. So the first thing typically what you want to do is, number one, don't expect that everybody understands exactly what your goals are in content management and being able to manage your content. So typically what you'd want to start off for is making sure that anybody you're presenting this to understands what you're trying to do. I've loaded this with 4 relatively general topics that you can update and move around, but if these work for you, by all means use it. We take a look at 4 top-line goals for content management. One is to protect the investment. You want to protect the investment that you've made already in the content. Updating all that content and having all that content developed isn't cheap. So you want to make sure that you're able to protect that investment by updating the library, making sure that it's being utilized properly. You want to make sure that designers and partners have fast and easy access to content. You also want to make sure that you have unimpeded workflows. You want to make sure that all your workflows that are surrounding or involving your library are going to be unimpeded and working flawlessly. You also want to make sure that your library management system or strategy is going to be able to scale as your library grows bigger, because they will grow bigger. So again, these are 4 top-line ideas that I put in here in talking with BIM managers and our BIM specialists. It's up to you to change it if they don't work for you, but at least the template's here and there's some ideas to start with. Now, what you want to be able to do is, once you've outlined your goals, you want to kind of top line what are the specific challenges that you have in meeting those goals. How right now do you feel that the department is slightly handicapped, or where are the issues that you're faced with in these areas? So I've preloaded these as well, just in case it resonates with some of the different challenges you might be having. With regarding to protecting investment, it's very difficult sometimes if you're not using UNIFI to keep all of your content up to date with all the different Revit, with every Revit version. And also having to open up each piece of content to kind of view parameters and update versus just being able to open it up and see it. Some of the workflows around accessing content, requesting content, loading content can be hampered depending on the library system you're currently using. A lot of systems, a lot of the people that we surveyed in our customer base were actually using like Microsoft shared drive and folder systems in order to manage their content, or something similar to that. The thing is those systems are really great for like holding files, but they're not necessarily great for searching for content. So a lot of times some of the systems that people are using are slowing things down because they're really not designed to be used the way they're being used. So you're kind of hijacking or hacking a software to try to function as something else, and that slows things down. You can also mention that a lot of times when you're using kind of these makeshift or different types of solutions to try to manage your BIM content, you're going to reach a certain capacity where it just becomes unmanageable and the wheels can start to fall off a little bit, and that means that you're not able to scale. And so the whole scalability of being able to manage your library as it grows without kind of having issues starts to take effect. What you want to do at the next is propose the solution. be very clear about it, is that you want to identify, vet, and implement a BIM content and library management solution that's purpose-built to support BIM managers and designers. So very specific and very easy to show and explain your intent. Again, this can work for any types of solution that you're trying to bring on board as well. So here's where we've created some slides where that ROI calculator can actually inform the presentation. So you can now take that ROI calculator that you've put your own numbers into and start to be able to present this information to the group of people who you're presenting this to for approvals. So what you want to be able to let people know is that you've been able to measure the current library efficiencies that you have in place right now, or inefficiencies. So based on our one designer ROI model that we put forward, you'd be able to put plug the numbers in here, where right now the total design team is spending 5.7 weeks each year searching for and loading content, and that's roughly coming out to a cost of $6,500 per year. So that's something that will be relatively impressive, that you're able to kind of identify specifically what the current status is now, and then it'll lead to being able to identify where the cost savings can occur. At this point, you can let people know, again, if it's UNIFI the solution, you might be looking at additional software as well. We just want to make sure that we're helping you get the best solution in place as efficiently as possible. So for this, basically can give you an overview of what one software like UNIFI CORE could be doing for you with specific numbers that we've been able to provide you with. So here it kind of top lines with regards to the goals and the challenges that we talked about. We're able to kind of put some mention in here of some of the different specific features and benefits that UNIFI can bring to support to help you protect the investment you've made on your BIM content, to help you with your workflows, to help you make sure that the designers have easy access to content, and to also support the scalability of your overall library. And noting again that we can help reduce the time spent searching and loading by 77.7%. Getting closer to the end of this, basically what we've put together here as well is UNIFI efficiencies and return on investment. So we've made it so that we've got some of the different metrics that we've already noted, and that we've also talked about the what is possible with UNIFI, so that you can have a direct comparison. We've also noted here that the salary that we could divert back to design work, which is the difference between these two numbers here, the annual investment in UNIFI CORE, and the estimated return on investment based on the numbers that we've calculated. So this is also another slide that will continue to help kind of communicate where you are now and where you could be if you adopted UNIFI CORE. Okay, we've got a question here. How many firms are the averages mentioned in the beginning based on? We surveyed 25 different firms. We received respondents from roughly 75% of those respondents, and we selected the firms not necessarily on size. We have a variety of firms based on the sizes and the amount of models they work on and designers they work on. But what we did select were firms that had adopted UNIFI and had implemented it and had a number of designers who were relatively skilled at using UNIFI, and they had built it into their workflows. So we wanted to make sure that we identified and worked with companies that had really adopted and were using it properly, such as Jay's quote that he mentioned at the beginning is that the value is what you get out of the software once you start using it. And so those are the people that we selected to participate in this survey. So the last page before we get to just a nice thank you page for this is, once you've been able to show the decision makers the numbers that they're looking for, it's always great, instead of kind of just ending it there and leaving them to kind of make some decisions on where to go next, is if you provide a slide that shows how you want the next steps to work. Basically, if you were to say, you'd like to at this point secure a contract with the software provider, UNIFI or who else, you'd like to get that done in 3 weeks. You'd like to have the installation done within a certain time period, and kind of give them a basic high-level Gantt chart so that they understand that there is a timeline that you'd like to work for, and that there is a sense of urgency to being able to move the needle on this, because the longer that they might drag on with the decision, the longer this whole process is going to take. This takes this also convinces them that you've put some thought and effort into kind of planning out the implementation plan, so that it isn't just we purchased the software and we're not necessarily sure how to roll it out, or we don't have a rollout plan. If you are trialing or working to trial UNIFI right now, you can talk with your account manager or customer success team, and they might be able to, as you kind of get closer to understanding or being able to identify how many users and licenses you might want, our customer success team will be able to help you kind of at least estimate some of these numbers a little bit better based on some of the different situations. There's a lot of variables that are involved at the firm level that we can't necessarily predict that might impact this, so we can have some conversations with you to help you flesh out this slide or a slide similar to it to help you communicate that when you do present internally. And so we've got another question with regards to if there is a trend on ROI based on firm size. I didn't see any specific trends on the ROI at the firm size with regards to the users using it. Again, there's also going to, with respect to time savings and based on the investment. What I did notice in some of the statistics that were coming back were some of the time savings on the BIM Manager portion of this. So some of the larger firms that came back when I had asked a question mentioning what are, if you were to identify some of the, what is the overall time savings for you as a BIM manager in adopting UNIFI Core, the larger the firm got, the smaller the number got, or the less time savings for the BIM manager. The smaller the firm was, the higher the time savings was for the BIM manager. One of the things that we were taking a look at as to why there was this volatility or variables in there is that the larger the firm, for some of the large enterprise firms, the BIM manager that we were speaking with might have 5 library managers, versus the smaller firms or medium-sized firms where you have a BIM manager that might also be a project manager that might also, that has very limited support with regards to managing that library. So the time saving for them as a BIM manager is going to be exponentially larger than the BIM manager who's kind of overseeing at a design technology level, but is not necessarily in the nitty-gritty of managing the actual library for UNIFI Core. So that was one of the reasons for the shift in that. Roughly what the time savings was coming back is that it was 10 hours, roughly 10 hours on average, but because there was extremes in the time saved and extremes in the size of the companies, we didn't necessarily want to put this in there because we felt there were too many variables to really kind of just calculate within 1 or 2 numbers of the time savings for the BIM manager based on the size of the company. I do think that there's probably going to be some variables with regards to the size of the firm and potentially the size of the library, but the numbers that were coming back with regards to time savings at the user level were relatively consistent regardless of the firm size. So after that, that's basically a thank you page, and hopefully at this point you're able to have any additional conversations or answer some more questions with your decision makers. But hopefully this type of presentation, the way that it's laid out and the way that it's able to kind of explain your case and the solution that you're proposing in this flow will help you sell through the potential engagement with UNIFI or any other type of software that you're looking to bring on board in your company. So that's more or less it for this portion of it. Does anybody else have any more questions? No, I don't think we have any questions yet. A couple questions earlier on. So I don't have anything else at this point right now to present, but is there any, if there's any additional questions or if there's anything else anybody's interested in asking questions about UNIFI, please feel free to ask them at this point. We do have Jay Merlan, our BIM specialist, on the line as well to answer any additional questions. Okay, well, I hope the lack of questions at this point means that I've answered a lot of questions. This is going to be an incredibly useful tool for you all. Other than that, Jay, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thanks for that very insightful, useful tool and PowerPoint. Just to close things up, thank you all for joining episode 5. And I hope the provided materials will help you all not only calculate the ROI with UNIFI, but also help you convince your decision makers that it's a worthwhile investment. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining again.
Thank you very much. This will be sent out in an email within the next 24 hours so that you can get access to this to be able to utilize it within your firm.